Okay, so thanks for joining me here again on the Atheist Roundtable. It's been since 2018 since I had a podcast. Now, look, I have video because technology has evolved. I have a new laptop and I have a guest tonight. So, my guest tonight is Ken Ammi. He is, let's just go with awesome, okay? Right? He's awesome because he's written books, and people who write books are awesome. We're going to talk more about. Let me just say this real quick. I know that Ken is a Bible believer, and I know that Ken has written books countering atheism. That is just about all I know about Ken. In the lead up to this interview, I tried my best to stay away from his social media, from all of those things, because I didn't want to come into this with a preconceived idea of who Ken was. I wanted to be able to just meet the guy and talk to him. Ken says that he's done the same thing, and that has saved him having to listen to my old podcast. So, good choice, sir. Ken, for everyone else, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell the audience and me about yourself.
Yes, allow myself to introduce myself. Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess I'll say I was born, but you probably already knew that about me.
I guessed.
Yeah, but the fact is, I was born at a young age on top of that, so there you go. I mean, wow.
Right, sure, that makes good sense too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I consider myself an independent researcher. And for anybody who's seen my list of books, I just love writing. If I could actually make a living from it, that'd be nice. But that doesn't seem to be happening. But hey, I'll call it a hobby. Okay, it's a hobby. And my main thing is looking at theological issues and then some cultural issues. For example, I really like writing movie reviews, but not movie reviews that are about the movie and the cinematography and the acting and all that stuff. I could care less about. I'm interested in the worldview, right? The philosophy behind it. That's what I'm focusing on, is what is the message that is being put across. And so in that sense, I kind of merge together, right, worldview issues with pop cultural issues and kind of try to discern what we're being told through our various sources of media, right? Because we're not the kind of culture that sits around flickering fire flames, listening to great tales of ethics and myth and legend, right? We sit around flickering lit screens of various sizes, and that's where we get our great tales, right? So that's kind of an interest for me. And as well as, gosh, really anything that crosses my mind that gets my attention usually ends up as being a book.
So when you were doing movie reviews, what kind of movies did you tend to review?
Well, so for instance, one book is called Transhuman Hollywood, and it's about various movies with transhumanist themes. Okay, so then we're talking about like the merging of humanity and technology, that sort of thing. And then another one was the entire Aliens and Predator franchises in one single book. And I always joke that my research for that book was watching 13 movies, but it was a lot of work to try to come up with a lot of the background stuff and then just reviewing 13 movies. Then there's one I did. Yes.
What you took a transhumanist view on Aliens versus Predator?
No, those are two different books.
Okay. All right.
Okay, right. So one is Transhuman Hollywood. That's one book.
Okay.
A separate one is just a review of Alien and Predator. And then I reviewed the first season of the TV show Raised by Wolves, which is kind of a new sci-fi show. They're about to launch season 2. And then right now I'm in the middle of a series of books reviewing movies that have UFO and alien themes in them. And that one's been pretty interesting and fun because I'm kind of watching old favorite movies. I'm watching brand new ones. I mean, I'm reviewing movies from any decade. It doesn't matter to me as long as they have something interesting to say, then I'll review it. And that turned into a series because I was writing one book about that. When I got to page 500, I thought this is getting to be just a bit too much less when I got to page 600. So I figured I'll just turn that into a series, and that way potentially can go on perpetually.
With the amount of sci-fi that includes aliens, I really feel like it could be perpetual.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite sci-fi series is Stargate. Have you looked at that series?
I've looked at it enough to find a lot of interest in it, and definitely they even put out their own documentary that ties their series arc of storytelling to real life or alleged real life mythology. They did that themselves.
Sure.
Right? So that would be of interest to me. But the only thing about it is it's a little bit too much of an action movie. For my taste, I detest action movies. So when a show or a movie just becomes too much like that, it's hard for me to just watch it because I just don't care for that genre. So for instance, I thought it'd be interesting to write a review of the Matrix and Terminator franchises in one book, like I did with Alien and Predator. But those movies, they're just too action-like, and I couldn't bring myself to do it.
I was going to say, didn't you say you did Aliens versus Predator? Because I remember a lot of action.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah. So that was like my fill. It's like, okay, that's 13 movies like that. I think that's just enough. I think.
Fair. Look, if you went into that not having a love of action movies, then I can see how you're going to get your fill with the Aliens versus Predator franchise. That's for sure. Yeah. Look, one of the reasons that I adore Stargate because it has a lot of action in it, and I adore the link to mythology, loose though it may be. Right. Look, I really tend to think of it more like a comic book adaptation, right? I don't need to see the same Batman or the same Joker every time. You can take a new spin on those characters. That is just, in fact, I hope you do. That's going to be way more interesting to me than just another, the same old story. But what I love about Stargate is it does get to the similarity between who was it that said any sufficiently advanced technology is indiscriminable from magic, right?
Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke.
That's the guy. Thank you. Yes. That they hammer that they play that note a lot. It is a constant theme in that franchise. They come up against a new thing. It seems to be magic. By the end of the episode, it's explained with technology, and that really, I love that series. It's just.
Well, now, riddle me this: why is it that 99% of the planets they travel to look exactly like a forest?
In Stargate terms, right? Within the universe's realm, the answer would be that humans were placed in human supporting environments by the Goa'uld in order to support slave populations. So the reason that you see all of these humans scattered throughout, living in very human-friendly environments, is because these planets were selected by this race in order to breed more slaves.
I thought it was because it was cheaper to film in a forest than to world build every single episode.
Well, that is the practical answer.
That's right. That's the more mundane level elucidation.
Yes, set building is expensive. That is correct. That is correct.
But I'm like, oh, okay, another forest. Come on.
And look, after so many seasons and like what, three spinoffs, yeah, there's going to be some repetition in there, uh, for sure, for sure. So books about movie reviews. What can, but besides the book about transhumanism in movies, I didn't hear an awful lot of books about religion and atheism. But you've
Yeah.
got those,
So
right?
yes, three about atheism, and I don't know, a few dozen on theological related issues.
Okay. So,
I, I always joke that I should know my own canon, but I haven't counted in a while. I think I'm up to like maybe 50 books, something like that.
wow, man,
Yeah.
that is very impressive. That really is very impressive. I can barely write. I can't write. No, never
Well,
mind. Yeah. I don't. It's one of the reasons. It's one of the
but you can
reasons why.
talk.
One of the reasons why all of my shows are unscripted is because I would try to start writing a script and we go, man, that's garbage. Throw that out. I'm not using that. Definitely not having any of that nonsense. Um, yeah, but okay. So what it? I don't want this to sound like a boring intro, but I don't know a better way to get into this. Can Ami tell us what you believe and why?
Oh boy, I guess we're talking contextually what I believe.
Yeah, look, again, for the listener, since I'm limited to a half an hour time limit on Blog Talk Radio, if this goes up, when this goes over 30 minutes, we'll just break it into multiple episodes. You'll be able to find the whole thing on YouTube, just believe me. But yeah, look, I would love to get to know better what you mean by a Bible believer, right? And what I mean by that is that I think you'd agree with me that someone else would call themselves a Bible believer, and you two would have very different ideas of what that means, right? I'm sure you've run into that. So, when you say that you're a Bible believer, what does that mean to you?
So one of the things that would mean is that truth is right. It exists.
Right?
Knowing truth is an universal imperative. We have a means whereby to know truth, and some of the true things that we really need to know in life have been revealed and preserved in what now we call the Bible. So I guess what I would mean by Bible believer is that believing that it contains certain essential truths about life.
And before we get into exactly what those truths are is what you're saying that these truths are not discoverable outside of the Bible?
So one of the theological concepts is that there's general revelation and then there's special revelation. So that, for instance, by observing the universe, the natural realm, right, the physical realm, we could deduce certain truths. But then there are certain special truths which we consider to have been spoken to us by God about things that would not be quite so intuitive, so that they would be a lot more particular and detailed, that go beyond just an observation of something going on in nature and coming to conclusions on it, but that would inform us as to how to think about those things, so as to build a world view.
Right. Okay. Um, I, but I don't know that you answered my question, Ken. So I'm going to have to try again. Let me see if I can rephrase this differently. Um, the truths that are special in the Bible, the truths that have to come from that special revelation, they can only come through the Bible. That special revelation only happens in the Bible.
It only happens in its most particular, detailed, and accurate way, I would say, because there are, okay, I'll just throw this out because I think you might connect with it considering what we talked about Stargate.
Sure.
So, for instance, why is it that virtually every ancient culture has at the root of their character, of their what makes them who they are as a culture, certain myths and legends that are very similar to one another, right? An original garden, an original couple, a great flood, survived by very few. Basic, let's just keep it at that level for now. So then we say, well, why is that? Well, because human beings are invented, and even though they have no known contact amongst each other, they came up with similar ideas. Or we could say, well, it may be that those things were once commonly known and shared history. And then just with time, they get augmented in this or that point, maybe names change, who knows what. And then we end up calling those myths and legends. But at the core, they could share an actual real event. And I'm not exactly proposing a humorism, if you know what I mean. I'm not necessarily proposing that every myth and legend has roots in reality, but I'm saying that there's a certain sort of commonality amongst them that would alert us to that it could, at minimum, be possible that they're based on real events because they're so similar across cultures that allegedly never had contact with each other. Does that kind of help? Yeah. So then, to loop back to the question, then the issue would be that then in the Bible we find the most accurate depiction of those. So, for instance, if you look at the Epic of Gilgamesh, it has an ark that's shaped like a cube. That's just not going to work. Period. But you could see that, okay, maybe one of the measurements they accurately recalled, and then they just decided, since we know that measurement, we'll just multiply it and we end up with this cube. Well, that's a nice story, but that's not going to work. So then when you read about the biblical description of the ark, you would say, well, that's a barge. That would work as something that just needs to float. So that's just one little tiny example of how you could say, well, here's these similar stories, but one of them would fit reality a lot better than the other one.
Look, I don't want to spend a lot of time on Noah's flood, mostly because I find it to be one of the most ludicrous stories in the Bible. But I will say that we do know a lot about wooden ships, we do know a lot about wooden boats, and we know that an ark made of wood in those dimensions wouldn't float. Wood has a tendency to twist and warp. And it doesn't just warp one way, right? It warps many ways. You wouldn't be able to make an ark float.
Well, I think that the issue would be quite a lot more fundamental than discussing wood warpage. So I would point out that what you subjectively find to be ludicrous is not a standard.
No, it's not me, because I am not a boat builder. But there are people who are experts in boat building. And we have historical relics of Viking wooden boats that got to a specific size and then stopped. And it's not because they couldn't fit more Vikings on the boat. It's because of the natural limitations of wood on water, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, feasibility studies have been conducted on the ark. And again, well, I shouldn't say again. I should say that these studies have been done. In fact, there's a book titled something like Noah's Ark, a feasibility study. But I think the issue would still be quite a bit more fundamental, because I'm discerning a hidden assumption of something to do with that. It seems that it couldn't be an actual real life recording of an event. Therefore, what? What would be the end of that for you?
Oh, no, you reached the end of it for me. It seems like it couldn't be a recording of a real life event.
Right. Ergo.
Ergo.
So are you saying it's just a brute fact? It can't be a recording of an actual event, period, full stop?
I don't know what a brute fact is, but I will say that as far as we can test, yes, that is a fact.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So now we're categorizing it as a fact. Ergo, or like, so what is what I'm going to ask. It's a fact. So what?
So we move on to the next.
Well, no. So what I'm trying to understand, because as you explained at the beginning, we don't know each other, so this is kind of a live getting to know each other session, right? And it's cool. It's cool. I think this should be done more often, because I'm enjoying the experience right now. And just so the audience knows, for like 10, 15 minutes before we started recording, man, we were laughing virtually the whole entire time. Just getting to know each other and laughing it up. But so what I'm trying to understand is, because there is a therefore for you, you're just not stating it. So you're saying this story cannot be a fact. Therefore, what? We should not accept it as true. We should disbelieve it. We should disbelieve the text that contains it. It's right. So what does that lead you towards?
I don't know that it leads me towards a lot. Look, I'm going to, just because a story isn't true doesn't mean that it can't hold value, right?
Well, sure.
I like
sure.
Stargate. It's
Stargate.
Not true,
I was going to say,
right? That's not true, but I enjoy that story. Just because it can't be it doesn't necessarily have a grounding in reality, doesn't mean that it's worthless. Doesn't mean that its source is worthless. Doesn't mean that its authors were worthless people. It just means that it's not fact. And I don't know that it has to go anywhere beside that. I like to take things bit by bit, piece by piece. I don't know. It's very difficult for me to build these kinds of overarching world. It's why I would suck at writing a novel, right? Because part of novel writing involves creating a world and creating a universe that has rules in it that your characters have to obey or not obey, or whatever, right?
Just write about a forest.
Well, and look, I play plenty of video games that are set in other worlds that have vast forests of pink trees and whatever, right? The point is that just because the trees are pink doesn't mean that they're not made of wood and I can't throw them in my biomass burner and make electricity out of them. That is actually exactly what happens in my game. That is, I take my person-sized chainsaw, cut down pink trees for the wood, and put them into a biomass burner.
Wow. What color is the flame?
It doesn't have a flame. All right, it's more of a grinder machine that grinds.
Oh, okay. Biomass, like literal consumption of the biomatter. Yeah.
Look, the game's called Satisfactory, by the way. It is a time sink. All right, I have. Oh my God. Look, we could afford a few minutes of a segue, right? I have never had to take more notes on a video game before.
Wow.
in order to go back in and play it wholly. Anyway, that's not a pitch for Satisfactory. That's just me and my latest obsession. Um,
Pink trees.
eh, eh, Look, I don't know. Look, just because the Ark story isn't true doesn't mean that a story about a family coming together under persecution, coming and getting through safe to the other side, um, isn't a fun story to tell. It does. I really think that the overarching theme of the Ark story is one of redemption and forgiveness, right? That at the end of the flood, in the story, God says that He's not going to do that again. He's never doing that again. I feel like He's expressing some remorse for His actions, but you take that with whatever grain of salt you like. Um, I and that He gives a symbol of a promise to not destroy the world again. That to me is characteristic of the villain redemption arc that I so love in fiction.
So then, yes, I definitely can appreciate that. And for instance, when I was trying to get one of my kids when they were very little to eat something they didn't want to try, I'd say, remember in green eggs and ham? How he didn't want to try the green eggs and ham. And he tried them and he liked them. So it was a totally fictitious story that I was able to employ towards making a motivating tale about, well, you need to try new things and who knows, you might even like it. So I totally get that. So I guess what I would ask is, what sort of atheist are you? So for example, are you an atheist missionary? Like if I said, well, but I believe the story is actually factual history, would you say, well, that's nice, whatever, it doesn't matter to me, you can believe whatever you want? Or would you demand that I adhere to actual facts? Because since that isn't a fact, then you should drop it. See what I mean?
Yes. Okay. So I do not find myself to be a typical atheist. What some of my favorite debates have been with fellow atheists. They are absolutely just the best. Particularly when we start debating whether or not I'm an agnostic or not. That's just the best. I love it. I don't find myself to be agnostic, but that seems to be a point that's only interesting to atheists.
Yeah, well, because there are certain sects of atheism that are very, there's a very thin line between them and agnostics. It's essentially a gradation. You can't even tell. But that's just a certain view of atheism.
Yeah, I actually think it's more of a overlapping Venn diagram, and people trying to pick one side or the other when they're right in the middle. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I think that people should be able to believe whatever they want to believe. I think that when people believe things that are not based in reality, bad things can happen. Not that bad things will happen, but bad things can happen. Okay. I think that it's important, like as you say, to acknowledge that truth exists, and it exists regardless of whether or not we acknowledge it or want to acknowledge it or even can acknowledge it, right? I think that that's important, and I find it important to try to, I find it important to try to acknowledge as many true things as possible and dismiss as many false things as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that T-shirt.
Look, I know that I believe things right now to be true that are wrong. I know I do. I have to. There is no.
I know you do too.
Look, there's no possible way I'm right about everything. My wife will testify. There's there's no possible way that I can be right on everything. So, so,
But not, yeah.
but yeah, I do think that you would be better suited if you believe things based on fact and not on faith.
Okay. So I I picked up a few things there. So one is that people should believe whatever they want, which to me sounds like it's subjectivism. I mean, that's obvious subjectivism. It's like, hey, you believe whatever you want. But then unless it's going to lead to something bad, right? But
look, if you want to, look, I'm going to use drugs as an example. Don't do drugs, just say no. But if you want to do drugs, I'm not going to stop you. And regardless of whether or not your drug of choice is legal or illegal, I'm not going to stop you. It is very likely that whatever drug that you're about to do is going to cause some harm to your body. All right. But you doing that drug, as long as you're safe and comfortable in your home, doesn't really affect me a lot, right? If you were to drink and drive, I have a serious concern about your behavior all of a sudden, okay? That's right. So it's when it's when a belief informs an action that causes harm to other people. That's when I get most concerned about that belief.
But then that view of yours is also subjective, right? Because we can all believe whatever we want. So you're choosing to believe that just because it's a personal preference of yours.
I'm choosing to believe it because I want to mitigate harm, right? There's no real reason, I suppose, that I should want to mitigate harm, except that I find harm to be, well, harmful to me. But I suppose there's no imperative, right?
Right.
For me to
Right.
want to reduce harm.
Yeah.
Except that if we're not talking about harm reduction, then I'm not quite sure what morality is. I'm not
Right.
quite sure
Okay.
what ethics are.
Okay. So we can, yeah, okay. So what I was saying, right, meaning yes, that is consistent with your worldview. Not that consistency is a universal imperative on your worldview, but it is consistent that it is just something that you want, because basically what you've been saying, what I keep hearing hidden assumption beneath it. I'm kind of getting that, and it's like you're talking and then there's all these hidden assumptions holding up your statements. So for example, you said, I think, I want, I find, and it's like, well, yeah, it's all subjective. This is about you and your views and what you subjectively define as bad or harmful. And so when you say something like that you're wrong about certain things, well, sure, of course, so am I. But then that's in a different category as a standalone statement. Then I'm wrong about certain things about which I should be right because we know better, because the facts bear out something that I'm rejecting in favor of a wrong view. And so when you say that it's important that truth exists, I would say, well, okay, but on your worldview, truth is accidental. Would you see that?
The discovery of truth is accidental? No, I'm not following it.
No. So, and I'm glad you said that, because you raise a very important issue in that most of the times when we're discussing these kind of meta level issues, right, we will inevitably speak of ontology and epistemology. So I was referring to ontology, you're referring to epistemology, and that's good, because at least we're in sync. We recognize that hey, are you talking about this? Yeah, that's important to distinguish and categorize. So I'm talking about like, I believe that you did say that truth exists whether we would be aware of it or not. And yeah, exactly. Truth is a thing in and of itself, ontologically, and in its nature and essence, it is a thing that even if an ant or a rock isn't aware of truth, it's still there because it's absolute, right? That's what absolute means. It is what it is, regardless of whether we like it or not, whether we're aware of it or not, whether we prefer it to be different or not, whether it doesn't matter. It is what it is, right? But what I'm saying is, on your view, that ontological truth that exists by necessity and is absolute occurred by accident because it wasn't created, it wasn't designed. It just happened.
Yeah. Okay. So for this exercise, I think we might be able to substitute truth here for the physical universe, right? I feel like where we're going here is that we're talking about the physical universe, that Jupiter exists regardless of whether the dung beetle can acknowledge it or not. I think that's true. I think that the physical universe, that I think that there is a reality um, that I get to perceive, right, through, I guess, five senses, six, seven senses. I don't know. I don't know how many senses I have. Apparently, I don't have just five anymore. I don't know. Okay, my mind is blown. Apparently, I have a sense of temperature and a sense of balance, and maybe even a sense of humor. I don't know what all my senses are, but apparently, I have more than five now. The that Those are the way that I can perceive and interact in the physical universe, and I certainly will agree that the electromagnetic spectrum is broader than my eyes can perceive. Right? There are auditory sound waves that I can't perceive. Right? There are lots and lots of things that I can't perceive with however many senses that I might possess today. Um, um, yeah, I think that it's a mistake, though, to recognize that an objective reality exists from objective moral imperatives. That's where I think we get into trouble. When you said that it's subjective, it's subjectively defined as harmful, right? That's where I think we've we've parted ways. We can define harm as it pertains to humans, right? It is harmful. Pay attention, people. It's harmful to drink bleach. Don't drink bleach. Okay? Um, it's very harmful. And regardless of any belief that you might have about the efficacy of drinking bleach, you won't. What was it? Wait a minute. Why were we drinking bleach again? I don't. Oh, was it to cure autism, or was that the bleach enema? It doesn't matter. Don't do that either. I, it Look, Ken, I can't make that up. All right, the internet is filled with idiots. All right, it's true. Um, 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 and the thing is that some people, and this isn't made up either. Some people believe that drinking bleach or having a bleach
Okay.
enema was going to be beneficial to them in some way. They are objectively wrong. They are
Yes.
verifiably wrong. And those beliefs led to great harm for themselves. They didn't harm me, but there something there was
Okay.
something that had to do with
So,
autism, and my children and I have autism, and that's why that story stuck with me.
okay. So we can actually end up getting there from just the basic level of baby steps I'm trying to make. So the issue was that, yes, whether we call it truth or reality, those might be interchangeable. They, what I'm speaking of now is the universe and what it does and what it contains. Those things are true. That's reality. And I was just pointing out that on your view, since that wasn't created or designed, it's just accidental, right? So for instance, the universe could have been completely different, and that would be the true reality, right? So what you're calling truth and reality, just as a first step, is just okay. Yeah, on an atheist view, then it is accidental because it just happened to have happened that way.
Yeah, yeah. Look,
Okay,
I can't think of a better word for unintentional than accidental. I'll interchange those terms.
Yeah, actually, I don't care much about the word as long as the concept gets across, right? So it wasn't created, it wasn't designed, it wasn't purposeful, it wasn't planned, it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't goal driven. It just happened, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't call it X. It just X'd, right?
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's just it. So now you referred to that you get to see that X, that truth, that reality, through your senses. However many you feel you have, de jour. Have 7, I don't care. Look, take what. But now, okay, now on your view, however, you get to perceive those things through your senses accidentally, or call it X again. I don't care. Because again, you weren't created on your view. You weren't designed. You just happened to have come about, just like life, just like brains, just like thoughts. And so that's also accident. And I'm going to just keep using the word accidental, and somebody can edit this later and put in whatever word they want. I'm just saying, so we don't have to get semantic about it. So reality is accidental, as is our ability to discern it, right?
I wouldn't say that our ability to discern reality is accidental. I don't because we know that the reason that we have the senses that we have are so that we can interact with our environment. Um, okay, like I don't want to say well, right, but okay. Um,
Well, okay. I hate to interrupt you. I will sometimes, only because you explained to me ahead of time how much you love to monologue. So I'm kind of gauging that. Maybe he's going into a monologue, so I better just stop him to make a point. And so just so you understand. But see, you snuck teleology in there. You snuck something into that. You said the reason why we perceive reality is, and then you were going on. But wait a minute, there is no reason. Not in your worldview.
Sure, there is.
Well, so then there was a creation via design, which is the reason for your ability to perceive reality. Then, or that's what I'm saying. You're sneaking that in, but that's not a part of your worldview. That there was a reason behind it. There was an accident behind it, or a very long series of accidents that kind of pile on top of each other to end up in where we are today.
Right. Look, it's not. I don't find it to be a leap of imagination to imagine that an organism that's able to perceive light waves survives better than an organism, perhaps depending on the environment. Some environments don't have light. That an organism that's able to perceive light might be able to survive better than an organism that cannot. An organism that is able to perceive color, different strains of color, be able to identify a flowering plant as a source of nourishment, right? These, I don't, it's very evident, I think, that our senses did not evolve independently, but in concert, right? There's an experiment that I can't remember the name of where the video is a person saying "ga ga ga." The sound on top of that is replaced with "ba ba ba," and what you hear in your head is an illusion that the person is saying da, 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 right? We get tricked with our vision, we get tricked with our hearing, right? Because our senses evolved in concert together to work together. I can't remember the name of that experiment, but what was that? Green dress, blue dress. What was that? Go.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm talking about. What
yeah,
color is that dress?
yes, yeah. What
Um,
team were you on, by the way?
I'm colorblind. I couldn't care less. Uh,
So the lady wears no clothes, huh?
that'd be a
She has
much
no
better
dress. I
discussion.
don't know. It's,
But look, yeah, but um, what I'm saying is that we can we can test and trace how our senses came to be through evolution, what they are today, right? We can test and see how other species have evolved their particular abilities. I don't know. Is a bat's flight an ability? Sure, why not? Is a is a fish being able to swim an ability? Yeah, I guess so. Why not?
so ultimately, though, the reason why they're able to survive is accidental because something happened to them that's accidental that caused the accidental climate or environment in which they find themselves to be just slightly more beneficial than the next guy that falls over due to natural selection. And so, I mean, what I'm saying is the whole scheme is accidental. So, for example, you referred to that it allows it to survive better, but then that instinct to survive is also accidental. And by golly, it must have happened to the very first living organism, or else it would have gone, hey, I'm just gonna, I don't know, I suddenly exist in a puddle of water. I'm gonna go to the edge of the puddle and oh, now I'm dead, right? It would have to have that within itself, some kind of some level. I'm not saying it was conscious or not, but what I'm saying is that instinct to survive is also on your worldview an accident.
It is unintentional. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So then if we loop back all the way to the first baby steps, then what we're getting from your worldview is that truth is accidental, as is our ability to discern it. There's no universal imperative to adhere to it, nor to demand that other people adhere to it. So sure, you, Andrew, can have an emotively subjective personal preference based on hidden assumptions about why you want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. But that's purely subjective. That's just a personal preference based on hidden assumptions. It's not anything about your worldview that would lead you to conclude that it is preferable to believe in as many more true things than false things, especially if certain false things can lead to harm, because then the desire to not harm yourself or let others harm you, well, that's also accidental. And your desire to survive, well, that's also accidental. So that's what I'm saying is the whole entire scheme from top to bottom, beginning to end, is purely subjective.
Yeah.
And
See,
if you want to say, well, yeah, it's purely subjective, then
look,
maybe that's where you have to land or
look. I
begin.
don't think. Again, I don't think that just because a thing is false means that it is worthless. Just so, I don't think that just because a thing is an accident means that it is worthless. Just because a thing is unintentional doesn't mean that it's worthless. Look, I do a lot of things unintentionally, Ken.
Yeah.
Okay, I act unintentionally a lot, and sometimes I unintentionally harm people. That doesn't absolve me of the imperative for contrition, right? It doesn't absolve me. Whether or not the drunk driver drove drunk by accident or not doesn't absolve them of the consequences of their actions. And I don't think that we get to escape um, the uh, the natural consequences of actions by saying that they are unintentional.
And interestingly, we looped all the way back to morals and ethics. So I guess we're going to have to get to that at some point. But yeah, I agree with you that just because something's accidental doesn't mean it's meaningless, doesn't mean it's useless. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just laying the groundwork to understand where you're coming from, which is that your preference for believing more true things than false things, it's just a subjective personal preference, and you can't impose that on anybody else. And even if you say, well, you shouldn't be, if you want to get drunk at home and ruin your life, that's your business. Now, on my ethic, I would say that's still problematic to me because I would love that person, even if they're a stranger, and I would hate for somebody to do that to themselves, even in private. But then you say, well, if they get in a car, then they're endangering other people. Absolutely. That is a huge problem. Again, that would be based on hidden assumptions about human value and worth and not causing harm and not doing bad things. All of those things that are so nice sounding when we state them, they are still based on hidden assumptions. And what I'm getting at is those hidden assumptions end up to be personal preferences based on hidden assumptions themselves. So it's kind of like a bottomless pit of hidden assumptions based on assertions. And now if as an atheist you say, yeah, I mean, to me, that's what reality is. And so I'm just going to sort of stoically say, yeah, that is my view. Then that's fine. Actually, I'm seeing the word fine right behind your your left shoulder there. That's fine right there.